Welcome back to Perspective Shift, the podcast that's all about challenging the way we see ourselves and the world around us. I'm your host, Leroy Glover, and today we're tackling a topic that cuts right to the core of how we live our lives. How do other people's perspectives of us shape the way we behave? Now, I want you to pause for a moment and think about this. How much of your life is influenced by what you think others see in you? It's a heavy question, isn't it? But here's the truth. Our sense of self isn't built in isolation. We're constantly absorbing feedback from the world around us. And if we're not paying attention, those perceptions can end up steering our actions. And not always in ways that reflect who we really are. Today, we're talking about self-awareness, and specifically how understanding the influence of others' perspective and perceptions can empower us to take control of our lives, our choices, and our narrative. Let's break it down. At its core, self-awareness is about more than just knowing yourself. It's the ability to understand your own thoughts, emotions, and behaviors, and how those things ripple out to impact others. But here's where it gets interesting. Self-awareness also helps us recognize the patterns in how we react to what the world reflects back at us. For instance, when someone says you're a natural leader, how does that influence you? Do you feel more confident? More willing to step into leadership roles? On the flip side, what happens when someone doubts you? When they plant the seeds of uncertainty, does it grow into second-guessing your abilities? These are the moments where self-awareness becomes essential. It's about asking yourself 3 key questions. Number 1, are others' perceptions of me accurate? Number 2, how much weight should I give their opinion? Number 3, am I reacting based on their views or my own values and goals? Think about that. The answer to those questions can change everything. Let's start with the good stuff. When people see you in a positive light, confident, capable, kind, that perception can lift you up. Picture this. A teacher says to a student, you got a gift for problem solving. What happens? That student starts to believe it. They approach challenges with more confidence, and suddenly they're not just good, they're exceptional. Or imagine a friend says, you're a natural leader. That encouragement might be the spark that pushes you to take on leadership roles you wouldn't have considered before, reinforcing a growth mindset. But here's the caution. When we depend too much on positive feedback, we risk building our identity on external validation. It's like building a house on sand. It might look strong, but the foundation isn't solid. Self-awareness is what keeps you grounded. It reminds you that while external praise is uplifting, it doesn't define your worth. Now, let's flip the script for a second. What happens when the feedback isn't so great? Maybe someone says you're unreliable or you're too emotional. Words like that can stick, can't they? And if you're not careful, they can start to shape your identity. Let me give you an example. If someone repeatedly doubts your abilities, you might start to avoid opportunities altogether. Not because you're incapable, but because you start to believe their doubts. That's the power of self-fulfilling prophecy. But here's something to remember. Sometimes other people's perspectives say more about them than they do about you. Maybe their judgment comes from their own insecurities or biases, which leads to the purpose of this podcast. Recognizing that takes self-awareness, and that recognition can be life-changing. You don't have to accept someone else's version of who you are. So, how do we take control? How do we stop letting others' perception dictate our actions? Seek out people who challenge and uplift you in constructive ways. And number 3, set boundaries. Remember, not every opinion deserves a place in your mind. If someone's perception doesn't serve your growth, it's okay to let it go. At the end of the day, you're the author of your own story. It's really you. Others' perceptions might provide feedback, but they don't and shouldn't get to write your narrative. Here's the takeaway. Self-awareness is your superpower. It is. It helps you separate the noise from the truth and puts you back in the driver's seat of your life. Yes, the world will always act like a mirror, reflecting perspectives and perspectives back at you. But the question is, will you let those reflections distort your image, or will you use them to see yourself more clearly? Thank you for tuning in to Perspective Shift. If today's episode made you think, share it with someone who might need a reminder of their worth. And remember, you have the power to decide how you see yourself. Until next time, I'm Leroy Glover, encouraging you to shift your perspective and your own story. Take care.